Okay, so you've probably heard it before that gluten is the absolute enemy, especially if you're trying to get pregnant. Well, we're going to tell you today that that might actually not be the case, and we will tell you how and why and all of the details. Just keep listening, and you're definitely going to want to hear this. God designed your body for fertility, but when the journey to parenthood feels like a heartbreaking mystery, it's so easy to feel lost. I'm Dr. Trisha, a nurse practitioner and fertility consultant who's been where you are. That's why I created Fertility by Design, where faith meets science to empower you with real solutions, holistic healing, and biblical encouragement. You are not alone. Your fertility is not broken. So let's walk this journey together. I know it can be super overwhelming when you are trying to conceive at baseline, right? And then you hear all this advice and you hear, you need to cut out gluten, you need to cut out dairy, you shouldn't be eating nightshades, you need to follow an anti-inflammatory protocol. Questions are, how long? Forever? Till I get pregnant? What then? Why am I cutting these foods out? And it just becomes very overwhelming. And when you don't understand why you're doing something, do you really want to do it? Or are you really going to stick with it? And the answer really is no. So yes, let's talk about modern wheat and processed bread can absolutely be harmful to your fertility, especially processed packaged products that contain gluten are definitely not going to serve you well on your fertility journey or on any health journey for that matter. Of course, life is balanced too, so we can talk about that. But of course, those definitely can be harmful, especially when you have gut health issues, inflammation, autoimmune conditions. But that doesn't mean that bread itself is bad. What if the issue is not bread itself, but just how it's been made? So on our healing journey, we discovered a better way. And it has been such a huge blessing for our family. And because my husband has taken the majority of the effort when it comes to the bread making, we brought him on the episode today to help give some insight as to how you can make your own bread in a healthy way, the way the Lord designed, and nourish your body with bread instead of feel like it is just evil. Okay, so how did we get into bread making? I'll start. We got into...
You started it.
Right. I started it. He finished it. That's how it went. So we were visiting family in Pennsylvania, and one of my cousins and his wife, we went on a walk with their kids, and we were just chatting all crunchy things about kids and life and all the things. And we started talking about how they make their own bread, and they started talking about Sue Becker, the bread lady. And she's like, you've got to watch her, like watch the sermon on the bread. So anyway, we did. And it was really eye-opening and we loved it. We're like, this lady is so quirky, but she's fantastic. And it was very entertaining, but it also like really stemmed like, oh, we don't have to completely cut out bread in our lives, especially because our kids every once in a while want sandwiches and things like that. And we wanted to give them a better alternative. So I said, we're going to make our own bread. And then
I made it.
Then he made it. So that's kind of how it went down. I mean, he took the initiative just because I say I do a lot of things. So anyway, in some of his spare time, which isn't much, he started dabbling with the bread making. And so that's been super huge for our family. And we'll get more into the details. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to just discuss the scripture that kind of backs up that bread is not bad. I mean, bread is biblical, y'all. In John 6:35, I am the bread of life. Jesus used bread as a metaphor for sustenance and eternal provision. Genesis 18:6, Sarah prepared bread for the guests. They're using lots of situations where bread was showing hospitality and honor through that food. Ecclesiastes 9:7, eat your bread with joy. So now we get to eat our bread with joy, right? And not stomach aches. God blesses that daily nourishment. Bread is not the enemy. It was really a sacred, symbolic, and it was really celebrated in that time. And so what happened is it was real bread, and what we consume now from that plastic bag is not the real deal. So let's talk a little bit about how that has changed over the years. So what happened, well, you tell the story. So we were looking at the cookbook, the bread cookbook. Well, you were looking at the bread cookbook because you were the one cooking the bread, not me.
Yes.
And you showed me a study that was like, there's a little blurb of a study that was done. So tell them about the study.
And so the study was basically, they were looking at mice and they started using, or they were feeding the mice your kind of normal, everyday off the shelf flour. It was mass produced and had all the nutrients and everything taken out of it. And what they were finding was over, I think it was 7 generations, the mice were experiencing fertility difficulties and they were not producing as well as the mice that were not fed the processed flour. They also, in the study, equated 7 generations of mice to about 100 years in normal human years, which is about where we are right now in terms of when they started making the processed flour and mass producing it to now is right around the 100-year mark, which is coincidentally when there seems to be a lot more fertility issues.
Exactly.
World, so.
Exactly. Isn't that mind blowing, y'all? And here's why. So what happened is we were making bread. Basically, the first steps of making bread is grinding the flour from the wheat berry.
The whole wheat berry.
And so when they grind, that's what they used to do. Well, when they started mass producing it, when you grind the wheat berry, it doesn't, when you break open the wheat germ, right? It doesn't last as long. So bread, when it was made fresh, would not last as long. You needed to eat it so it wouldn't be shelf stable. So what they did to make it shelf stable back then in mass-produced bread was they stripped all the nutrients and the wheat germ from it. And that's where it got its protein and all of the vitamins that are so nourishing in bread. And what happened was they started having these disease processes pop up and they started seeing neural tube defects. And then they said, oh, well, we're not going back to the way we made bread because we're making a lot more money mass producing it. Let's inject it with synthetic vitamins instead. So that's really where like folic acid got its start instead of natural folate, because it was pulled out of the bread. Women were having neural tube defects, and so they injected it back in. Same with some other different disorders among people with getting severe vitamin deficiencies because their main source of those vitamins were being stripped away. So this matters, obviously, for women trying to conceive, and it matters for everyone. But if you are consuming some of these empty products, or even like falling for like the whole grain marketing stuff, it's still not containing the nutrients that are needed. It's not nutrient dense. It's harming your gut health. It's going to harm your blood sugar balance. All of that impacts fertility. And that processed bread is fighting against all 3 of those. So definitely when you start making it homemade, it makes all the difference. So tell us a little bit about how you make the bread, like from the beginning, and our trials and errors.
Yeah. First off, we had to find wheat berries. Ended up ordering them. And then to grind them, there's a couple different options. So we have a KitchenAid attachment that just essentially attaches to the mixer.
Yeah, it's a KitchenAid mill attachment.
Grain mill. And it does a pretty good job. Doesn't do quite as well as it could or as well as some of the other ones. There are some more expensive options that do mill the grain very well. Lately, we've been using our blender, and I forgot.
Vitamix.
If you put the wheat berries just into the Vitamix and turn it on high, it actually grinds it up almost perfectly, which has been much better and producing much better bread the last couple month or so that we've been making
it's been a huge trial and error because while the bread all along has tasted way better than anything you can buy in a grocery store.
Texture was never.
Yeah, it was really dense and like rising. So we did the grain mill attachment, which was like $100. You can get a very like nice grain mill full machine thing for like $300-ish.
Yeah.
But we opted for the KitchenAid attachment since we already had that. And then we were like, well, maybe the Vitamix will do it too. So we've done it both ways. Then for a little while, we trialed doing both the grain mill first, right?
Yep.
And then the Vitamix. And that is how we first realized like it just wasn't getting ground enough.
Yeah. So
and it really rose.
And that was the problem with the KitchenAid attachment. It wasn't grinding it fine enough so it wouldn't absorb the water and rise as well as it should have. So once we figured that out, it's been much better.
Now it's so huge and fluffy and bread. Like it's real sandwich bread. And, we've made so many other things now. I mean, with muffins, you don't have to let it rise. You just grind the wheat berries and use it as the flour. Of course, the bread you have to let rise. We have not tried to do our own sour bread from it yet because we already got enough mouths to feed around here. But that's on the list. We've made cinnamon rolls. And when I say we, I mean he has made cinnamon rolls and cinnamon bread. And I've helped some.
Yes.
And I definitely want to know how to do it. We also invested in something else to up level our bread making game? What was that?
Oh, the bread maker. That was key. It was clutch. The Zojirushi bread maker.
The Yoshi bread maker.
The Yoshi bread, which is awesome because you can put the ingredients into it and then you just leave it alone and it does everything for you. So you don't have to spend as much time watching over it, and once it's risen and dealing with it after it rises and rising it again. So it does it all in there. You just put it all in, push a button, and then a loaf of bread comes out at the end. So
yeah. So there wasn't like, even before having the bread maker, don't think you need to run out and get a bread maker. We did it for about a year now without a bread maker. And it's not that like it's overly time consuming in like the amount of time. It's just like there's a lot of wait time.
You have to be available.
You have to be, yes, you have to be available. So if you're going to be home, it's not like you're spending, probably the amount of active time that we had to put in was like maybe 30 minutes, but like you're waiting an hour for it to rise and then you're waiting another 45 minutes for it to rise. So that was like,
it's a process.
A little cumbersome, but again, not you actively doing anything. So you just have to kind of be home. But if you have the bread maker, forget it. You just put all the ingredients in it and it has these little things. It mixes it up. It shapes it even if you want to. You still take it out and shape it sometimes.
Lately taking it out and shaping it.
He likes the way he shapes his bread better than the Zehrung do.
It comes out both neater.
So anyway, and it's been looking fantastic. It's rising well. It's so cool. And, not to say there's no gluten in it. It's not gluten free. What happens when it's like mixing, right? It forms gluten.
When you knead it, yeah.
When you knead it, it forms gluten.
But it's just the protein in the flour and it's
right.
Yeah.
So it's just the gluten protein, and it's not as like the same amount, right? Like it's lower.
Adding extra gluten. It's just natural gluten in the flour.
Yeah, which doesn't affect people the same way they're gonna. Well, I know that, you might not know that, but I'm telling you that it doesn't affect people. So that's why a lot of people can tolerate sourdough bread. Homemade sourdough bread, but they can't tolerate other glutens. But even if you're eating sourdough bread, you want to make sure it's made from fresh ground wheat berries, because if not, you're still using that commercialized, nutrient stripped flour, no matter what. According to Sue Becker, there's no good flour you can buy at the grocery store. It has to be fresh ground, freshly milled. And so that is the game changer for us. It's been, a really fun thing to do together.
I've enjoyed.
It's been really fun to watch you experiment and to just be proud of like what came out of the oven. And it's been really fun for me to eat like, and see the loaf be gone in a day because everybody loves it. And the kids are like wanting piece after piece after piece. And, Sue Becker has a bunch of resources out there where she talks about how all of her allergies went away. Her kids never got another infection after she started feeding her kids homemade bread. And it was just such a life-changing experience for her that you should go dig into her and listen to her bread sermon. But for us too, to be able to feed our kids bread, but know that it's like nourishing bread and not garbage. So it's been a fun journey. And typically anything that has to do with anything in the kitchen, baking, cooking, is a little overwhelming for me. So that is really the reason why I didn't like take the plunge. But now that I've seen him do it and watched it happen, it's really not that hard.
There's some trial and error in there, but
little trial and error. But again, it's not like the trial bread didn't taste good. It sure did. So it might have not been Pinterest worthy. There were moments, but now it definitely is Pinterest worthy for sure. So it's just an actionable step that we can take towards returning towards God's design for bread and for our nutrition and for life. So we hope that you are now really interested and intrigued on making your own bread. We want to know if you decide to step out in some faith and make your own bread, or have your husband make some bread, have him listen to this episode and tell him that like real men make bread. We're going to, one day there's going to be a bread making business up in here. I can't give away all the secrets, but I feel it. My husband's not on board yet, but
it's off the board.
He needs to quit his job first. He said, I'm like, no, that's not how we do things around here. We just do them all at the same time. That's how we do it. But we're hoping that you found a new way to consume bread that makes you feel like you don't have to feel guilty, that it's not wrecking your fertility. And there's just so much wisdom in just slowing down our lifestyle to be able to do something like this, nourish ourselves deeply, return to what is really good and what we've kind of demonized just because the world has kind of ruined it for us, and go back to what God truly gave us. So know that you're not in this alone. If you are searching for more support on your fertility journey, please, please, please go join our Fertility by Design Facebook community, doing all kinds of things over there, doing live mini masterclass, daily motivations, advice. We're there for you. That group is there for you. If you are looking for more support in your inbox, go sign up for our Trying to Conceive Tuesday, TTC Tuesday emails. Those are jam-packed with lots of information, recipes, you name it. We do it in there. So go check it out. Or if you're like, I just need more help on my fertility journey right now, go ahead and book a complimentary call with me and my team. And we would be so happy to chat with you and give you options for your next steps and help you get some answers. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you here next week. That's it for today's episode of Fertility by Design. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a review to help more couples find hope, and share this with a friend who needs encouragement on their fertility journey. Need even more support? Let's connect. Find me on Instagram at Trisha Zehrung for faith-filled fertility guidance, real solutions, and a community that just understands. Remember, your fertility is not broken. Your body is beautifully and wonderfully designed, and God's plan is always perfect. I'll see you next time.